Okay, great. So here we go. So yeah, thanks for being here. I'm actually super excited because we had an interesting idea on, it was really just yesterday. That's amazing because I've done so much with it. I just realized, well, yeah, that was just yesterday. Um, that is going to expand this whole dialogue part. So let me create a background first because this is going to be more than just the book. This is, I'm Anybody who's followed me for long with the community practices knows about it. Its lifespan of an approach is what is it? The average is probably about 2 months. And so this is the first session, so I can't make an accurate prediction with predictability, but this is the first one I'm really excited about. So let me create a context for the books I'm writing, and then let me talk about where it's going to go and how, I mean, I could see at least 5 sessions on just this idea. So this is my plan for the next several Wednesdays because it seems to be the both best for y'all to give you a toehold into some things and actually relatively easy for me. And let's see, I'm not getting the read AI that was supposed to have started. So let me watch it. Sometimes it doesn't start. I should never assume it did. Yeah, there was an error adding read AI. So
Greetings, everyone, all you humans and probably AIs.
okay, now why is it not allowing me to try it again? There we go. Let's see what it did. Let's see, I may have given it, nope, it says join. Okay, let's just try it again. Ah, now it's been added. Wish it would tell me that it's added, I'll feel better. Well, I tell you what, I am recording, right? And I can always convert it into the Read AI. I always like a backup. One last try, and then I'll get started.
I just saw that one of the books that you are in progress of writing is called the Amplio Kata or the Learning
The
Kata.
learning kata, yeah.
And by chance, I just posted a post on the improvement kata on LinkedIn today.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
That fits very well.
So I'm gonna give one more try. Maybe I usually pull it out of here and I pulled it out of my calendar. Maybe that's the problem.
In Germany in 2 weeks' time, not very far from where I live, there's one of the biggest lean events happening, the Lean Around the Clock, LATC, for the 10th time. And they have a pretty big area of activities on improvement kata, Toyota kata, etc. And all the gurus will be there, like Mike Rother and Thilo Schwartz and lots of other peoples. And I'll be one of the others who'll also be there
Oh,
and
that's
do a little impulse with Thilo Schwartz on trying out coaching kata and doing a little dojo practice there. Yeah.
well, that sounds great. Yeah, I've been to some lean conferences before and they're real exciting, really good opportunity. Okay, well, I'm just gonna have to trust that the Zoom recording works. I don't know what's going on.
Hmm.
Uh, I did know they were changing how Zoom and Read AI changed, but they said it wasn't happening until March, and now I'm wondering if it's already happened. Okay, so let's create the background first. So that's not what I want to see. Here it is. Okay, so the way Amplio is organized is basically into 5 areas. In fact, if you want to, I am putting more of this online as well. Uh, This is kind of new. I'm not sure how much I'm going to put up, but there's a fair amount that's going up. And, we've got where you can now navigate to these 5 areas. So if you want to learn about portfolio, not everything obviously is up here. It's maybe actually 5% or 10%, but I'm trying to get it organized. And then home just takes you back. But the point is that when I look at what I've done for the last 30 years in improving organizations, I can break it down. This is about the sixth or seventh version of breaking it down, but this is the simplest, which is good. There's figuring out what you're going to build. There's figuring out how you're going to build it. There's figuring out how to tell other people to improve. So you need the coaching kata or learning kata. We call it a learning kata because it can be used both to learn yourself and you could use it as a coaching. So originally I was calling it the coaching kata. And we'll talk about that. That book is also online, and that'll be our next week's session. It's not based on Rother's Toyota Kata, but it was influenced by it. It's actually based on what I learned by Fernando Flores in the 80s on how to learn and how to coach. And that's why I don't call it, well, that's why anyway, it is a kata because I like that name and that style of things. And then what's missing mostly for me, for most people, is like the foundations of why things work. So we have a section on that. And then value flow engineering. And the reason I have them separate, sometimes I kind of consider they're both foundational, is this is what to do and this is how to see. So this is what's going on and this is how to see. But this one is going to be, this is about basically uh, we're focusing on improving the workflows. And let me pull this up again. I've actually got 5 books in process. Here I'm only showing 4, but there is another one uh, that, well, maybe this is the main 4, but so the amplio development, I should have amplio development here. This is a book that I almost finished 2 years ago, but there were some things about it I didn't like. But now it turns out I can use AI to create a kind of a learning model with it. So that's one of them. We're going to be talking about the physics of flow. I'm going to walk through that first, and then we'll have a discussion about it. The Learning Kata book is kind of written, but I need to thin it out a little more. And then the value-driven objectives, really we have a breakthrough way of doing requirements and analysis that integrates design thinking, jobs to be done, some of my own work, human centered development. It's not all of them. That'd be way too much. It's aspects of each that you combine together makes for a much more effective approach. And I'm currently creating a booklet with AI on ChatGPT is what I use. So this is the beginning. We'll do this one. I mean, this is the beginning down here. We'll do this one next. And then I don't know what I'm going to do after that, but I know the learning kata is next. So ignore all this. These were just some notes I was taking when I was in it. So let me show you 2 things. So one thing to remember is if you ever forget where anything is, just go to Success Engineering. This is my, you can always find this on LinkedIn. This is my website. And if you go to resources and books, I happen to have the physics of flow right up here at the front. Okay. And then from here, you can go, I'll just go there right now, as a matter of fact. Yeah, Thorsten.
Yeah, so the 5 books you will write or are busy writing will be on the five parts of your Amplio Penta,
Yeah,
or
they each relate. So here's the physics of flow book. I'm going to walk through this first just so you can see where it is. This is the learning kata book. Okay. Uh, this is another one. Yeah, this was the one that wasn't up there. I think people are mostly in a state of learned helplessness now. This is both what it is, how we got there, how to get out of it. This is the development book, which is not online yet, but I'll get there. But there's something actually really exciting that I'll show now, and then I'll walk through the physics of flow, and then we'll have our discussion about it. So one of the ways I write books is I use ChatGPT. And the way I do that, I don't tell it to go write a book for me like that. That could be useful, but that's not what I do. Um, what I do is uh, in oh, that's the public. So I keep track. I use ChatGPT so much. I have a lot of projects and remembering things. And one of the things I have is in the books related. And what happened is I don't know why that says stance there. I've been meaning to rename that. It's just physics of flow. And I started a conversation to help me organize my thoughts. Okay. So this was what I used to start getting the physics of flow book. And then I wanted a part two, or I didn't know I wanted a part two. I renamed it, realized there was something missing. So what I do is I work with ChatGPT, and we got the idea yesterday in the ACE program, and I'll show you the physics of flow. But one of the ideas we got in the ACE program that's very exciting is, since I'm using ChatGPT, is I've created a public ChatGPT you can get into. Okay. Uh, this just takes you to explain. This is in the book now, actually. So I'm in the book. That link doesn't take you to the ChatGPT. It takes you to a place to understand. I think this is a breakthrough way of teaching. And now this is an experiment. You guys are the first ones that I'm introducing to actually working. The idea is, so I'll just go through this because I think this is an important part of how to go through this book, is first of all, I've been working with ChatGPT as a peer. It knows not to be nice. It knows not to be mean. It's very like a discerning scientist, mentor, friend, associate. Doesn't let me get away with anything. I mean, man, it is really precise. It doesn't, but I mean, it's friendly, like you'd want an associate to be friendly, but it's not saying nice, oh, good work, unless it is good work. It's judging the work, not me. Uh, so the way this works is there actually is this generic chat GPT that I've created that you can go into, and there's a link to this. Okay. And I started it out here. You don't need to read all this, but I started it out here talking to it how I wanted it to behave. So I thought I'd leave it in there so you can see if you want to. But you can just come into this and ask questions about the book or about the physics of flow or about anything because it's connected to all my work. And of course, Tom Gilb's work, Don Reinertsen's, Goldratt. I mean, it knows what I'm consistent with, and you could ask it questions. So this is one thing that you can do. And this is in the physics of flow with ChatGPT thread. Just click that, you're right there. Okay, there are no permissions needed. And it describes how it's going to go with you. See, it's going to be peer level, rigorous, not antagonistic, but not agreeable, just for the sake of agreement. It's not a defense. This is not a defense or an attack on anything else. It's just to see how to increase agency, giving you some responsibility. And although I take input from people, it's not crowdsourced. In other words, I'll take input and then I guess I decide, but I often go with what ChatGPT. Well, actually, I don't go with what it says. I never do that. But we talk about it and then we come to an agreement and then I decide. Okay. So everything is based really in this logical way. So, like, here's a question could be asked. My team consistently has several unfinished stories at the end of a sprint. What can I do? I haven't tried this yet. I mean, I've tried it with my stuff, but that's something you all can try. Okay. That's the idea. So, the point of this, and then I'll get into the book and then we'll start talking. I just needed this very first time to talk about it. There will be other chat GPTs available for all the books as I introduce them. Okay, each one will have its own thread. Oh, but here's the other cool thing. You're actually anonymous inside the public chat GPT, but it occurred to me some people still might want to have their own because it's going to get noisy fast. So if you want to, you can go into your own chat GPT and just say engage in Ampelo's physics of flow mode. In other words, start with that in chat GPT, and it will know what you're wanting to do is engage in the physics of flow book model. Okay. So this gives you a way to have your own private thread. It gives you a way to come into the public thread. And I'm going to be adding a discussion group soon to this whole thing. That's just a separate normal discussion group because the public one doesn't interact with anything. It's just you at, going into the base. So any questions on that? And I'll go over the book, or that clear enough? And again, this is laid out in detail. I just figure you should read this. It's about
Um,
a page and a half.
so as far as that second option, just saying engage in Amplio's physics of flow mode, I'm not sure that that works on my end. I wonder if I need to add some background knowledge to
No,
it.
it should work. So if you go into ChatGPT and if you tell it engage in Amplia's physics of flow mode, it should know to talk to you based on the Amplia's physics of flow. It should know that.
Okay.
It should work. I've actually tested this type of interaction before and it worked in other cases. So give it a shot, Ray, and if it doesn't work, let me know.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, this is kind of surprising to me. I've been learning how to use AI and ChatGPT and step by step. See, it doesn't really remember everything necessarily. One advantage of being in the public physics of flow model is it definitely is hooked in. But this other one says it knows to go, it knows of my book, it knows my general thinking, and then it pulls from the general knowledge. So it may not be as precise doing it this way. And if you want to give me examples of I did it in the public and I did it here, here's what's happening, let me know. I can train ChatGPT. This is one of the very interesting things about AI. By itself, I think it's kind of risky in many ways. And I don't just mean in talking to it. Uh, I don't mean in just talking to it about knowledge. I mean in agentic programming, all sorts of things. I'm very dubious about it. Now, I'm not going to say in what'll happen in 2 years because who knows? I mean, it's amazing, totally amazing. I use it an hour or two a day, but it has funny limitations and it makes stupid errors. I mean, gross errors at times. I mean, sometimes I have to take a break, get a cup of coffee or something because it's been so frustrating to use and it gets stuck, particularly in, well, certain relationships. That said, you can train it. And that's what I've been doing for a year. Okay. It all started with a simple comment by one of my sons, who's also in the tech field. And he said, well, you can ask it if you left something out. And then once I started seeing interacting with it that way, it was like, man, just one thing after another. And then I would get an idea. Gee, I wonder if it could do this. And I ask it if it can do this. And sometimes it says no. And I say, is there a way so you could do it? And then by interacting with it that way, I've figured out how to be more proactive with it and get a certain amount of training. I mean, training it kind of thing to work. So I find it really useful. That was another reason why I sometimes put these chats up there is because I think you can learn how to use it by not saying I'm using it the right or best way, but it is an example that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. And like I say, well, I'll give you an example of something I just did over the last 2 days. Uh, uh, I just wrote a 40-page book, and this is not a book to really kind of, but it's kind of cool. So, oh, maybe I didn't put it in here yet. Yeah, I just started writing. Oh, I just realized that I don't need to show you the chat GPT. I just started writing this. So I don't have it up there. Amplio books. I've have a lot of experience in lean manufacturing, but I haven't talked about it a lot just because there are other people I think better than me, so it's interesting you said that, Thorsten. Hopefully you'll see Michael Ballet there. I don't know if he'll be there or not, but if he is there, if you find him, tell him I said hi. He is
I
awesome.
would, but I know from the program that he's one of the people who's not there. Bob Emiliani will be, and lots of other
Oh, good.
legends,
So
but
anyway,
not
I
Ollie.
put this book together because I've got some clients who are getting into lean manufacturing and tying process with manufacturing and all that. And it's only 40 pages. What I did is not try to explain lean from the beginning, but if you are a lean person, it brings in a lot of different people, including Musk, who brilliant in the manufacturing arena, Tom Gill, my work, and of course Lean, TPS. So it's kind of a quick summary. But what's cool is as I create a public chat for this is the tip of the iceberg. But you could talk to it and get more as you want. See, this is a new kind of learning where it gives you an outline and it gives you a way to interact to go deeper. Okay, anyway, a little distracted, but I'm kind of very excited about having done this. So let me go into the physics of flow. Let me tell you about what this book is, and then we could just have an open conversation. So this book started out as a trailing section in my Amplio development book and in my learning kata book as a how to deal with complexity, because I think most people have forgotten the power or have not never known the power of using what you know. The idea is complexity does obscure things, but it doesn't obscure cause and effect. You can see the cause and effect. It's still there. It's just there's other stuff you don't see. If you look at disasters and all the different things that happen, you'll find that causality was present, but there were some relationships, sometimes very simple relationships, but unseen relationships due to complexity that causes problems. By the way, I just wrote something that lays this out more clearly than I ever have. So this is my latest post where I talk about this. Just because there's cause and effect in complexity does not mean it's predictable, because there's a lot of stuff we can't see. So I'm not arguing for predictability. I'm arguing for a stepwise process of being able to do something we can't understand and then discover either something new or get an improvement. But either way, it's an improvement. So in a sense, you still do have to run experiments, but the experiments aren't does this improve anything? The experiments is more about what did I not see before? So you're improving your understanding all the time, but it's not an experiment. Oh, gee, I wonder if this will work. It's like having a boat that's sinking because there's a hole in it and something else. Well, stop the hole in the boat if you can, and then see what else is there now that you've stopped that. So anyway, the physics of flow book came from the idea of I wanted one common how to deal with complexity and what I call the physics of flow. That was kind of inferred by Don Reinertsen, but Wolfram Mueller, who I highly recommend if you're interested in theory of constraints, he's one of my favorite people. Not just because he's so smart, which he is, but he's so open and agreeable. There are some TOC people that are really, really smart, but I don't like to necessarily work with because they're so hung up on it. He and I are not totally agreeing on what to do either. It's not like he agrees with me, so I think he's nice. No, he and I have some fundamental differences. But so what? That's a good thing as far as I'm concerned. We have different emphasis. Yeah, Thorsten.
No, I just wanted to say I'm kind of jealous of Mike, for example, because he's living so close to Ann Arbor with all the lean guys at the University there of Michigan. But I am living close to Wolfram Müller at least, so I'm pretty close with
Yeah,
him
you
also.
should you should be good about that.
I
So
really like what he does with his TOC Dolphin
yeah, he's
Circle,
brilliant. Yeah,
etc.
I
Yeah.
agree. Highly recommend too. Anyway, so the idea of this book, it was a chapter, a section in the Kata book. It was a section in the Amp Dev book. And I decided, no, I need to pull it out, have it stand on its own. And at first I thought it might be 20, 30 pages. But what happened is, as I described the first principles of flow, and there are 11 or 13, and then I described cognitive first principles, which are mostly ignored. But, people perceive reality through the language and distinctions available to them. I learned this from Flores. And anyway, so my intention was to have two parts. Part one was the physics. Part two was not this. Part two was going to be using what we've learned. And I talk about factors for effective value streams and things like that. But in talking to ChatGPT, it came clear that there were a lot of not first principles, but kind of the way things work based on first principles. So that was part two, from principles to practice. So there are three parts to the physics of flow. There may be a fourth one, because in talking about lean manufacturing, it gave me a interesting concept I had seen but never thought about, which, see, I've had a 2-day transition workshop, based on William Bridges' work. But I had never thought about that you could look at micro problems. Like I hadn't thought about it generally. Like I have this corollary to Conway's law, because what I found is when people have focused teams, like these guys are writing that component and they're working on that component and they're working on that component, which is not a good thing. When they create cross-functional teams, it's almost necessarily going to happen that they're now going to conflict with each other, and most people think this is a problem. And in lean, we've seen this. Like when Chrysler, go back decades, thought, oh, I'm going to go lean, and to do that, I need to manage my inventory and work in process. So they instituted work in process levels, which is a disaster because that just accelerates the variability in the system. Work in process is something, I mean, at the step-by-step level is something that you slowly go down, but more important, it's a result of good workflows. This is where Kanban gets it wrong, in my opinion. They often start work in process levels at the columns. That should be a side effect of good things. And then Ford did something similar. They started doing lean well. It started exposing errors sooner. So they thought, oh my God, we've broken our process. Look at all these errors. So sometimes there's these misinterpretations. So one of the things I'll be adding probably to this book and others is this idea of what are some things that look like anti-patterns to the physics, but actually aren't. Okay, so the way I think you could best read this is to just basically, kind of go through it. I do explain why I wrote the book, because I think there's some value to this. This is not a book like how I would do it. It's a book of what works and why I'm copying what works. Building on top of Gill, Reinertsen, Goldratt, Russ Akoff, Deming, a lot of Deming in here. Okay, so I think that's kind of it. Oh, one last thing. So again, coming here, there is one other thing I need to mention. Because this is kind of why it's written this way. So this is one part that the physics of flow is really, really critical in. See, we talk about understanding. A lot of people say, oh, you got to follow to understand because this is new. And I say, no, that's really bad, because how many of you have ever experienced multitasking? I mean, yeah, the cost of it, right? How many of you ever experienced having too many things to do? How many of you experience interruptions? How many of you ever experienced what happens when you can't see what's going on? How many of you have ever experienced being in a situation where it's so bad, it just totally sucked the motivation out of you? See, there's all this tacit knowledge we have. And when you say to follow to understand, you don't get access to it. These first principles and cognitive principles, as I call them, a separate group, they enable you to get to your tacit knowledge. This is what I learned from Fernando Flores, is that we can expose what we already almost understand that's in our thought process, but not brought to the front. Regular training methods, I got that spelled wrong, but regular training methods tell us that anything more than an hour or two, you're going to forget most everything. If you have an 8-hour class, good. 2 hours, maybe you got. 6 hours, you forgot very quickly. That's just the way it is. So it either bounces off because it's too much. And I know I'm the funny one to be talking, right? I've been called getting water from a fire hydrant. But that's why we have 1 hour sessions, 1.5 hour sessions in the ACE program. When you do little bits, you get the chance to learn in between. And the physics of flow gives you some knowledge you can hold on to and learn, and you get access to your tacit knowledge. And what I mean by tacit knowledge, there's that famous saying, you know what you know some things you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. But what people forget is there's stuff you know, and you don't know you know it. And what I'm talking about is when you go in and talk to somebody and they say something, and all of a sudden, oh yeah, I recognize that. I remember that. I just never put it together. Okay, so I'm going to pause now. Oh, that's why these were some other notes when we were. This is why I'm converting the Amplio material, and it is in process. Not much has actually been done yet, but I think 60% of it can be done in under 12-minute sessions. So I'm re-recording those. And then there are some things I call segments that 2 or 3 of these combine to a lesson. And every now and then you've got a big lesson, but not many. Okay. Okay, so that was a long intro, but it was because I had to give the background. Next book, we won't take so long because, okay, here's the learning kata. Next time we can go to the learning kata. Remember, it's here. Resources, books, learning kata. This should also take you to Google Docs. There is no ChatGPT yet for it, but there will be by next week. Okay. Okay, so questions. Now I'm opening it up. Oh, and I see Frederick's here. Thanks for your question, Frederick. By the way, I added this. See, this is what's so cool with AI. So I told ChatGPT to give me a bibliography, and it organized it for me. I mean, I validated it, and then it had whether it's rated, whether it was see, it tells you whether it's foundational or supporting, and this is definitely a big piece, as is the goal is less supportive. I mean, is less foundational. But anyway, so it's easy to add. So if you want to see where this comes from, these are the books that this is based on. Okay, questions from you? And it doesn't have to be just on this book. It's just where I'm starting. Anything. No, we seem to have lost Ray. I was hoping he was going to try the chat.
Question from Karen in the chat.
I'm sorry?
There's a question from Karen in the chat.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, I should have been looking through that. So hang on. So let me do that and then I'll get to you, Thorsten. From Karen? Okay, I'm looking for it. Or Karen, why don't you just say what it is, or you're not able to? Oh, here it is. If one thing is using Copilot, one would not have, yeah, you'd have the access. Just make an account on ChatGPT. It's free. Yeah, you cannot get there from Copilot. This is a ChatGPT. I've not trained Copilot. That's the point. LMSs need to be trained because otherwise they just basically pull from everywhere. It's a good question. If you go into other places, the problem is it's like getting pablum. It's just all blended together. It cannot tell what's good or not good. It just takes whatever people talk about the most. And it also tends to talk to you from the mindset of that. I've had where I talk to it about certain frameworks and stuff. And at first it just gives me what I'd have if I had somebody who's promoting the framework. And then I start challenging it and questioning it. And then it kind of breaks down, oh yeah, I guess that's right, and all this. So it's kind of just whoever talks most on the LinkedIn or written books, that's who it follows. Somebody else had their hand up, but I forgot who that was. Was that you, Thorsten? Yeah.
I will add another question when you had the different chunks of learning. The small increments,
Yeah.
mini segments of 12 to 20. So, organizations, they want to have large chunks, right? Large
No,
amounts. So
I
how
will
do
not
you get
accept that they want large chunks, right? No, it's not what they want. They may think that that's what they want. In fact, I would see that's another issue. In fact, this is actually very related to this whole thing. There are so many misunderstandings about what large organizations want. By the way, large organizations don't want a detailed plan moving forward. What they want is a confidence on when something's going to happen, knowing you're dealing with a risk. And they think the solution is to have a detailed plan moving forward. People want the training because they want to hire people who they think have the solution. So, okay, great. In 2 days, I'll get a Scrum Master trained and they'll be able to help us. But what they want is results. The process they're taking is one of the process they're taking is one that actually almost certainly ensures they're not going to get it. In fact, this is funny. This was one of the things we're talking about in Amplio, in the ACE program, is how to shift what HR wants. So we came up with kind of 4 things that I've got right here. HR wants to get people who know what to do and get quick results. So they figure they'll hire somebody who's certified. Of course, that is almost certainly a guarantee they're not going to be able to do what they want because because like Deming says, if you don't have theory, you're not going to be able to take other people's practices, or when you try other people's practices and apply them, then it doesn't work because there's no understanding. This is the irony of the framework approach, is it has you take a practice, and people say, oh, Scrum doesn't have practices. Sure, it has practices. It's got sprints, it's got cross-functional teams, it's got roles, it's very predefined. And the challenge with that is those practices and roles are not universal. So it is a framework to discover what's happening, but once it happens, it doesn't tell you how to use it. So you have to reinvent, or you have to reapply something that may not fit you. When you have the physics of flow combined with Alexander's patterns, and patterns are not, this is what I wrote, by the way, this morning. You should read the last post. Patterns are not solutions to recurring problems in a context. It's not what they are. Mike, go ahead while I pull this up.
I'm just going to mention I was going to speak to that prior slide you just had up.
Yeah. This one?
No, the one with the Amplio right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to bring this up yesterday under the process police. I think there's a fine line there, because when you use standard work and then apply things like the improvement kata, you do want to police the standard work, because the only way you can improve is making sure that things are being done a certain way and then look at ways to actually improve it. So
yes. Yeah.
Some may call that process police, which is absolutely wrong, because the process police is exactly as you defined, but using standards and then improving against those standards is the best way to move
Yeah,
forward.
thank you so much for this, because that's absolutely right. In fact, I was going to get into this notion of with the process police is a good example of this. So I think though, to do like this, I take this from Toyota Kata because it's so brilliant. I'm not advancing Toyota Kata. Rather, it's just, oh, I love the guy. It's just amazing. It's just wonderful. But part of what you do is you have standard work, like Mike just said, so you can actually go step by step and improve it. So what should the process police? See, but this is the difference. There are 3 things that you can police on. One, you can police on predefined arbitrary practices. Well, that's not a good thing. That's what most process police work on. What the kata tells you to do is follow your procedures so you have clarity on what's going on. And then when you find there's a better way to do, change your procedure. By the way, in 2009, when David Anderson and I came out with the Miami Lean Kanban conference, that's when we kind of introduced Kanban to the world. And one of the things we talked about was this idea that you work this way. And what happened is both Ken and Jeff actually said, no, this is bad. Now you've created a workflow and people are going to follow it. And we said, no, it's like what Mike just said. The workflow becomes your standard work, meaning this is how we think is the best way to do it. And when we find there's a better way, we change the standard work. So going to where you have to do the work itself without change, that's bad. The kata is good, but there's a third one, which is first principles. You should always follow first principles because they're universal. For example, multitasking is going to cause extra work and delays. Now, that doesn't mean that you never do multitasking because there's a cost to it, but there might be a reason to do it. But you at least are aware of the first principle. It's so it's like the law of thermodynamics example. If I'm building a car and somebody, say I'm CEO of a company building a car, and somebody says, "Hey, Al, I've got this great motor. It actually proves the law of thermodynamics is wrong, and we can get great gas mileage because we're violating the law." I'm going to be dubious. So there are some things that you should not be violating, and those are first principles. Now, every now and then, because you may be misinterpreting things, every now and then you should question everything. And I talk about that actually in the book too, about what first principles are. There's no dogma. You're always checking things like that. Okay, so coming back to what Karen said though, let's do that because that's good. And I haven't forgotten you, Thorsten. This is just a good segue on all this. Here, wrong. PowerPoint, right PowerPoint. So this is one of the things that we're trying to change. One of the active things we talk about is HR wants to get people who know what to do and get quick results. Well, you know what? That's a good thing. Wouldn't you like to hire somebody who knows what to do and get quick results? The problem is they've figured out that certification in a workshop gives you that, which it doesn't, because what you need to know is how to take known practices that work but tailor them to your situation. And that's where patterns come in. This is part of what the Amplio system is based on, is we can use Alexander's thing. And as I mentioned in this post I just did, patterns are not solutions to recurring problems in a context. In fact, let me pull that up because this is the best thing I've ever written about patterns. A pattern is a named configuration of interacting forces that recur in a given context, along with guidance. Each pattern describes a problem. Notice what this is right out of the book, which occurs over and over again, and then describes the core of the solution to that problem. It's not a solution, it's a process. To get a solution, it's a work, it's a thought process, and it requires, in his domain, the forces that are present in architecture, and in our domain, it's the first principles of knowledge work. So this book represents that piece. I won't say it's missing because I pulled it from I've just integrated it. I've made up some when it comes to the cognitive principles, but not when it comes to the flow principles. Okay, so coming back to here, and then, Karen, you might have more questions, but then I want to give Thorsten a chance when we come back. So hiring management want people to work on a specific problem or project. They don't really, they just want to get that problem or project solved. Because what happens is as soon as that one's solved, there's another problem. That's why I hate when anybody says, oh, it's a good start. Okay, great. But why take something that's a good start and not a good continuation? What that means, I'm going to get started well, and then I'm going to get stuck. So what you want is something that's a good start that doesn't get you, stuck. Patterns can be used for that too. The way Amplio does it is I have the patterns and we say, well, here's a good starting point, slightly tailored, and then here's how you extend it when you change. We just talked about the process police. They don't really want a plan. They say they want a plan. But if you can show them that you know how big something is, this is another funny thing. Estimation at the story level or at the feature level may be problematic. But actually, if you know how to estimate and you know what you're looking for, and this is not planning poker, you can't do this with planning poker. Planning poker is designed to actually fail in the planning fallacy. It's not a relative estimation approach. But the thing called team estimation, Steve Bachman made this up years ago. There are ways to do large scale estimations that are reasonably accurate. And it's not by figuring out how complex it is. You don't know how complex it is. Complexity is perceived. Okay, so Thorsten, you go ahead and then we'll come back to Karen if she's got more.
Yeah, well, you got me with the excerpt from the article on patterns because I always like if I have a concrete definition in my head And it's exactly this one, the solution to a recurring problem in a given context, etc. And now you say, okay, but that's not what Alexander really meant. So this is new to me and really interesting. I'd have to think about it. Do you have a link to this
Yeah, this
article?
is, I'll put it in, it's my recent activity. So here,
Mhm.
I'll put this in. Of course, this will, but let me explain why that is. This is very
Yeah.
important. This is really, really, really important. And it's the core of why there's so many problems in the agile space. This ties in with Deming's work. Yeah, just put it in the chat. This ties in with Deming's work. Deming says, if you don't understand what's happening, this ties in with what Mike said earlier. See, the fact that you have standard work, it's not just you have standard work. You have standard work where there's an understanding of why it's the standard work and how it's fitting lean principles. Now, if you don't have that, then you just have a solution, then well, now you have to run an experiment to see if that solution works. When you understand what's going on, when you understand though what's going on, when you understand these first principles, then you know that, like, let's for example, if I'm overloading a team because I don't have an intake process, I know very well that if I create an intake process, that's going to be an improvement in the overall workflow in terms of the mechanics of it. Now, will I get an improvement? I don't know that. Why? Well, you just said you're improving something. Well, if I have a ship that's sinking and there's a hole in the boat and I fix the hole, do I know the ship's going to stop sinking? No, because there might be some other problem. See, complexity doesn't hide causality that we can see. Most of the causality that I'm mentioning is first principles we can see. What it hides is other effects we don't see. So it could be when you make it visible, if you've got a very terrifying situation, people don't want to even let anybody know they're working on something. By the way, I've run into this. So you have an intake process, but then people avoid the intake process because they can't get their work done. Well, now you got to figure out how to solve that problem. But you didn't know you had that problem until you cleared up the stuff that is known causality. So this gives us a way to, when you do, in a sense, run an experiment, but the experiment isn't, is an intake process good? The experiment is, there something else we don't see that we now need to solve? When you look at a pattern as a solution to a recurring problem, excuse me, let me say it a different way. Look at this pattern. It's a configuration of interacting forces. This just I used instead of first principles. What if you don't have first principles? If you don't have first principles and a pattern devolves into a solution. And if you look at a lot of the patterns, quote unquote, that are out there, particularly in the Scrum patterns, that's what they are. Oh, yeah, we solved it this way. Oh, yeah, we did it that way. Oh, yeah, we did it that way. Oh, yeah, we did it that way, which is useful, but it's not an Alexandrian pattern because it doesn't explain how it resolved the issues. For example, a daily Scrum. Well, that's one way to handle being able to see where you are every day and pivoting. There are millions of other ways of doing it. So the way you figure out how to do it is by looking at questions. Here, let me give you an example. I tend to talk too much theory. I know this. Oops. I don't know what lucid is. So there are two different solutions to doing short-term planning. One solution is sprints or any kind of, time boxing. Another one is flow-based. You work on the next most important thing, and if it's more than a week, you break it up. So when you realize that, what are the issues here? Well, so what I can do, I've not done this all over the place, but sometimes I look at what are the forces. One force is, can the team look ahead a week or so? If they can't, sprints don't make any sense. Are you building a new product using minimum viable products? That's a different type of relationship. In other words, what's the relationship you have with your clients? Do we need to integrate with other teams on specified dates? These are issues. And you could work through these issues. See if you can't look ahead, and if the team is not willing to use a flow model, and their team is willing to use a flow model because it's a better model, turns out. If they're not, you got to go to increments. So what a pattern can do, it's not just a solution to a recurrent problem. It's a way to think about how to figure out what your solution should be. Now, here's another big difference. Sorry, I know I'm on a roll here, but I'll shut up in a minute. Not for long, of course. So this is a big difference in the whole learning model of most of Agile, if you're and anything based on Deming or first principles. So most things are inspect and adapt. In fact, if you read Ken Schwaber's first book, Agile Software Development with Scrum, he talks about that Scrum is based on empirical process control. In other words, the process itself is a black box. You don't understand it. It does something and you respond to it, inspect and adapt, inspect and adapt. But your understanding comes from the experience you've had with it. So you do improve, but it's based on experience. It's not based on improving the model. Plan, do, study, act, or if you want to use John Boyd's OODA, observe, orient, decide, act, they're not equivalent, but they can be, they're like tunable approaches where I can tune PDSA to be like OODA and I can tune OODA to be like PDSA. I've even written something on this. It's kind of an enhanced PDSA. Both of those, as you look to see where you are, you look at your model of understanding, you see what you can do, that's the study part. You can then change your model of understanding, like Mike says, change our standard work. Oh, we should be doing this instead of that. And then you move forward. So inspect and adapt is a theory-less first principle, I should say. Scrum has its own theory, but it's a theory about Scrum. Like if you do this, it'll work. It ignores the fact maybe you can, maybe you can't. So this is an example of a pattern. How do I figure out flow? I'm not telling you do one or the other, but I give you the issues. And what I have then is I take all these issues out here, and you could use it's not like you have to follow this, but are they familiar with, well, oh yeah, they know Scrum, so let's do Scrum. Would sprints be an easier transition? Yeah, they would be. Do release typically take more than one sprint? Yeah, will sprints make it easier to focus? Sometimes they do. Our customers available only at set times? Yeah, kind of have to do that. Often being interrupted, and I can't avoid it. Well, yeah, we are. I don't know how to stop that. To get more, sorry, my team's not that disciplined. On a continual basis, no. Oh, well, all things considered, maybe this is the right choice. Does that make sense? Then see, now I'm not just starting someplace to start someplace. I'm actually looking at this as a pattern and how to decide what to do. Okay. Pause for questions. By the way, I don't have a hard stop at 9. What I want to do in these sessions is these can be like an hour and a half. I had always had it be an hour if it was a presentation and a half-hour Q&A, but this is like we can still go to 9:30. So other questions from anyone?
I'll
sorry.
say I haven't looked at the flow model, but when you were talking, it brought to mind a project I did for pharmaceutical, and they were producing, standardized SAP master data. And they developed all this training, and then I interviewed people who were taking the training, and they said, well, this is so much more than we need. We just need to understand how it affects our area, what we need to do. And it just, made me think, why don't they get that feedback before they roll the training out, so that there's just so many opportunities for flow that organizations don't take advantage of. Your thoughts,
Yeah,
Al?
no, you're pleading my case. Appreciate it, because to be candid, I hadn't thought about that. But that's just another reason this approach works. So if you're going to make a large amount of training, you got to build all this. And then what you're doing is you're not only inundating people with it, it took all the time to build it. What you can do otherwise is look, what do they need to know? Let's build that, let them learn, take advantage, and then what do they need to know next? Okay. So the thing here is kind of interesting because it brings up something else. It's not just, yeah, as soon as I get to you, say, I just want to say this last thing. It's not the pile that you have available to pull from. The Amplio system is staggeringly large. Why? Because why shouldn't it be? But you don't go to it all. You have a way to navigate what's my problem. And we try to break it down that the whole thing is organized from either a problem solving solution or here's an important insight. So then people can go and say, oh, what do I need? And pull it on demand and learn that way in little increments. And that's an important piece. Okay, Susan, go.
Well, in far too many organizations, they view training as something that you do to people so that if they don't follow some particular rule, you can fire them. And one of the things I have seen is that very little learning goes on in most training.
And if it's a certification training, the focus is on how do I pass the stupid test. I used to teach SAFe. I was the first actually SBC trainer outside of the SAI organization because they knew I understood large scale. This was back in 2012. And not in my classes, but in every class that I observed somebody else doing, and in my class a little bit, because we always had the Friday, it was 3.5 days. The Friday morning was how do we pass the test? But I was always trying to explain why things work. But it has devolved to the last day of the training is how do I pass the test, not how do I learn something that I can apply. Dale.
Yeah, this is real interesting, and the data example that Karen gave is very apropos to this. I've worked on a few SAP implementations, and then I was a program manager for a data warehousing and data mart program for the Department of Defense, and I came on in the middle of all that work that was being done, and one of the folks that was a government employee asked me to come down and talk to them about what was being done on the data side of things. And what I discovered was that the data analysts and the data architects that we had on our consulting team thought they knew more about data than the people actually using and doing their jobs. And this guy was telling me, he says, I asked him, I said, does anybody actually come down here and talk to you about this? He said, no. We had some training a while back that talked about, what we were doing and how we were going to do it and all that kind of stuff. But, nobody's really said anything. And at that time we had a prototype, if you will, of what the new system was going to look like. And it didn't address any of the needs that the working folks had. So, that's you really need to get underneath all of this to really understand what it is people know, what it is they're willing to learn, and then what it is they really need. And look at all three of those things in concert with each other. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful.
You know what's interesting that you and Karen have brought up is a parallel. See, when we build a product, we know we need to do it incrementally. Oh, but we could build 3 months of training out there with a plan on how to do it and what people are new. We don't need any feedback. I mean, that was sarcasm. But that's what people do. And what's worse than what Karen and Dale, what you're saying, what's worse is not only are you going to build the wrong thing, but if you actually use it, you've got a 10% retention rate. This is not my opinion. You do any study in curriculum, you find that it's interesting because this was a big insight for me. Every study I read talked about how basically 85% of what was done in a 1-day workshop is gone within a couple of days. Then it occurred to me, wait a moment. That's not accurate. You can retain an hour. And 1 hour of a 7.5, 8 hour workshop is 15%. So I was like, oh, just give little bits. By the way, I'm not a big fan of universities sometimes when it comes to the curriculum, but universities and colleges have known this. That's why they don't have I do philosophy all day on Monday, and then I do English on Tuesday, and then I do physics on Wednesday. It just drives you nuts. But I can do an hour, hour and a half on one day, and then another hour, hour and a half, an hour later in the day. But what that also gives me is the ability to learn between the sessions. This is the same way that you individually you want to learn, but if you've got a product you're building, you want to give them a little bit, let them try it, and then get more ideas. You want to learn a little bit, let them learn, and then see what their problems are. It's an exact parallel. In fact, now that I say this, I don't know why I've never written up that parallel. I've known it to be a parallel,
Sounds like
but
you have
there
a
is a,
writing assignment there.
I'm sorry, Dale, what's that?
Sounds like you've got a writing assignment there.
I do have a writing assignment, but you know what? I'll probably tell ChatGPT how to do it. In fact, you want to run an experiment? I kind of want to run an experiment.
Yeah.
So let's go into the public ChatGPT on physics of flow. I use the word, I have four kinds of stakeholders. Consuming stakeholders are those that use it. Consuming stakeholders, use it, see how it works, get feedback from them, and improve.
Yeah, you might want to stick stakeholder in there at the consuming.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I bet it would have figured that out, but good to get it better. I don't worry about the type holders because it figures that out. In learning, you
Not yet, I will.
teach a concept, then let them try it, and then come back for questions and give them something new. In both cases, you're doing incremental value delivery, letting them try it, and then responding. Was there some other comment, or I got that? That's okay. A couple typos. It's okay. So I don't ask it if I think I'm right, if it thinks I'm right. I've learned not to do that. That biases it. So I just say thoughts. Yeah, see, this is where it's good. It always tells me I can't remember once when it hasn't told me, okay. I mean, sometimes it tells me I'm wrong, but when it tells me it's good, it always tells me how to sharpen it. So, oh, I love this. This is exactly what I was saying. Then it talks about the governing dynamic. Both are systems where value is only revealed through use. We knew that already, right? See, this is what's interesting. This is an example of tacit knowledge. Didn't you know that before? But I didn't put it in the question. It wasn't conscious. So now we have this governing dynamic. See, this is perfect. By the way, I'll put this in the chat. Again, in the Physics of Flow book. Oh man, I just love this. Now, I knew what I said had some truth to it. I just didn't realize it was that good. And it's not always. In fact, very often it says, no, Al, and I have agreements with it, by the way, certain tones, certain things I can bring up, which I can modify through a conversation. Okay. Learning cost. Wow. Wow. Okay, I want to pause for a second. Stop reading. I want you to notice something here. Was there one thing in this? Was there one thing in this thread I've shown so far that you didn't know already? I suspect not. But did you know it before it said it? I suspect not. This is the example of what you knew, but you didn't know you knew it. And by using the physics of flow, and in this case, just to be clear, this is the physics of flow about work, but these are cognitive first principles. This is how people learn. This is in the physics of flow book. These are also things you know, but nobody talks about. But once they're pointed out, you say, oh, yeah, I get that. There's one reason you get it. Unless the animation is really good, you're all human beings. I'm serious. This is how people are. Now, if you spend enough time up in the mountains with a guru, maybe you get past some of this, but even then, I'm not sure. Okay, coming back to here. This is so exciting. See, and this is what it always does. Sometimes it's slight and sometimes it's massive. It's just we're in agreement, so it's a slight push. Yeah, it implies that. This is perfect. This is exactly right. I don't think I totally made that connection. By the way, you have to be careful when you use ChatGPT alone because it uses a lot of words that are, I don't say, they're not academic. They're kind of more precise, but not necessarily how people think about things. So what I find is I'll let it write. It writes to me, and like it likes to use the word epistemology a lot. Okay, I know what that is, but a lot of people don't know what that is. So it's like you got to sometimes test it. And then you can tell it don't use certain words, but then it uses them anyway. So. Oh, this is so perfect. Now, here's an interesting thing. How many of you have anything to do with manufacturing or are familiar with manufacturing? Just kind of raise your hand. A couple of you, okay. See, this is the parallel. This is the parallel between why lean in knowledge work and lean in manufacturing. They're not the same, but the substrates are different in a sense, but the philosophy, the theory, the checking, the feedback is the same. Yeah, Thorsten.
No.
Are you just raising your hand to say yes? Yeah. No, I appreciate that. So this is the other interesting thing. And this is one of the books that we'll be doing probably 2 weeks from now. Yeah, I definitely want to do the kata next. But the next book after that, so I think I know the order of the books because this just makes so much sense. So I'm going to do the kata next because it is actually good enough to put out there, except I'm a little OCD with shit like that. But this needs to be thinned out a little bit, but it's mostly good. But then this is a big one. And raising the bar is not done, but I might as well point it. So I'm going to do this 2 weeks from now. The thing about raising the bar is this first part one, seeing the trap. This is done. This is actually pretty good. I'm very pleased with this. And then part 2 becomes how to expand into other areas. This is how to help you out of the agile space. And I've only edited it up to here, not very far. And then part 3 is other domains. So this part 2 is definitely a knowledge work, an amplio. but we've created Casey LaFrance and I are co-authoring this. I've done the first two parts. He's adding these into other domains. He's I don't know. He knows more about more things than anybody I think I've ever met in my life. I mean, this guy's brilliant. But he's totally humble. I don't know. I hate the word humble, but he's got humility. You know, he's just a mind. I don't know if I've ever talked to him about it, but I suspect he also has rapid mind movement. That's what I call my ADD. It's just always
Who, who are you talking about right now? Sorry, I
Casey
missed it.
LaFrance. He's a friend of mine and he's in the ACE program. And
Ah, okay.
so he writes on Medium a lot. So he writes a lot of posts. I highly recommend following him. Everything I said about him, I meant as a compliment, just to be clear. Okay. He's one of my favorite people on the planet. He writes really well. And you can find him. He's a professor, but don't hold that against him. He's very down to earth, is what I mean. I know a lot of professors, very down to earth. Okay. Very smart guy. And I just love working with him. He's in the ACE program. That's how I've gotten to know him. He's one of the ACE partners, as are some of the people here. Susan's an ACE partner. Nikolai and Tony are the 4 ACE partners we have. I mean, there are more people in the program, but an ACE partner is somebody I'm actually actively helping interact and doing things they, for their work. Okay. Yeah, definitely follow him. He writes this almost as much as me, so he's just another fire hydrant. Okay, other questions? Otherwise, I could go through some highlights of the book that I think are particularly interesting, but if somebody has to ask me to do that. Otherwise, ask me to do something else. Well, I've got to turn this into a paper. In fact, this is sometimes how I write. Can you turn this into a LinkedIn post? Because it's too a more in-depth article to add to my learning kata book. Do it in line. Now, I normally don't ask it to do it in line, but I've been finding it's easier to copy it in line and format it than it is to take a downloaded Word document. I don't know why that is. Okay, questions? Tony.
No, 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 I'm good.
Okay, yeah, I saw the mic came on.
Uh,
Yeah, this is exciting. I'm like, wow. You see, this is where it's so good. It makes connections you sort of knew but didn't understand. You have an intuition. In fact, that's the other thing about this. You know, I see tacit knowledge is not intuition. They're not the same, but tacit knowledge creates the intuition. So I had this tacit knowledge that these things were connected, but it showed up as intuition. I wrote what I wrote, and then it connects the dots. This is where LLMSs are really good. And the fact that I'm using ChatGPT is, to be candid, more of an historical accident and then not seeing enough reason to move. Okay. It improves at a reasonable rate. So I'm not saying it's the best, not saying that at all, but I've got a year's investment in it. And I probably have spent, I probably spent 250 hours with ChatGPT over the last year, at least. And I know people who use Claude and Grok and ChatGPT and Pilot and all that. And there are usually where other things are better is in pictures. ChatGPT is good in some pictures and not in other pictures. So I actually had ChatGPT make this outline for me. And then it improved this graphic. Boy, what I started with, I showed it what I first said. It says, "Oh, it's a good concept, but it's really kind of crappy." Uh, didn't say crappy, but it was obvious. That's what it meant. That gave me a lot of coaching. Yeah, Tony,
So what you're saying is you're homeschooling ChatGPT.
you have to, and then it homeschools me back.
There you go.
So it is an interaction. And what's really interesting is I sometimes forget sometimes is a euphemism for pretty much always while I'm awake. Don't give myself credit for some of the ideas I have. It doesn't mean I'm not humble or that I don't have humility. I know other people know a whole lot of stuff I don't have a clue, but there are ideas I have that I haven't seen anybody else do. And so what I do is, well, is that right or not? So I'll ask it. I said, see, like I remember about 6 months ago, I do a lot of things in systems thinking that to me, I've pulled from any number of places, and I talk about this. And so in some sense, I'm like, okay, well, so in the foundations part, if I go to the foundations page, so one of the things I do is standing on the shoulders of giants. So I know I didn't do this on my own. I mean, there's where's the graphic? Oh, I thought I had a different graphic here. But I know that I come off Russ Akoff, I've got Alexander, I've got Deming, I've got Reinertsen, I've got Goldratt, Tom Gilb. I mean, these are the main things I build off of. So I asked it something, and somewhere I didn't even ask it, am I doing something different? I was saying, is other people doing this? And it says, well, actually, no, I didn't know this. See, what I'm doing is I'm taking all these bodies of knowledge and I'm putting them together. Now, what's interesting about that is not to feel better about myself, although I'll admit that's kind of nice, but it's more the power you get from when you take this and this and this and this and this and combine it, you get something that you didn't have with the pieces, which is basic systems thinking. This is one of the things Akoff talks about. He says systems are not defined by their pieces, they're defined by how it all comes together and what the relationships are. And this is the core of the approach I take to complexity. I'm in a complex domain, but it's really perceived complexity. And that doesn't mean there aren't relationships that I can see. It means there are some relationships I can't see. And what's really interesting is in complex situations, it's usually the simple relationship that gets missed. It's not the complex relate. It's complexity hides the simple. The best example is the Piper Alpha. If you're interested in stuff like this, yeah, this is second sort of disaster. The North. This was a oil platform that blew up a long time ago. See, it's 12. This thing is 12 years old, and that was before then. And what's really interesting is what caused this to happen was that they stored the documentation of something in one place in a different place from where what they changed it affected. That's it. That's what caused it all. That's what caused it all. If they hadn't done that little bit, it would not have blown up. And what that documentation was is that they were working on one of the pumps and it shut it down. And so what happened is that when they had a little problem, they didn't know that the pump was shut down, and that led to a cascading series of events, and the whole thing blew up. A lot of people lost their lives. Now, what's important to realize in something like the physical world, once those chain of events happen, you are stuck. It's going to happen. But in the software world, if you get feedback and you can pivot, you can stop the cascading series of events. This is where one of the books I love, if you like anecdotal books, definitely get this one. This book is just too this book is a fun book to read. I'm not sure where I put it. It's the it wouldn't be there. A lot of complexity, I would think it'd be in here. Meltdown. Yeah, this makes sense. This is just a really fun book to read. Now you'll see it wasn't core. It isn't. It's more supporting. That's with a breakdown. The first one means there's a key up here. It's a core structural, so it's contextual reinforcement. Although it turns out, in fact, maybe I should add this. I should say core to me. The reason it was core to me was because it was while I was reading that book, I understood, I got the connection. It's just like, oh my God. Disasters happen because you've got complexity. You can't see what's going on. A simple thing happens of coupled events and it cascades through, and the danger is the nonlinearity. That's why long feedback cycles are so bad. So in a sense, this book may not have the impact on you it had on me because I'm saying it explicitly, but I like books like this anyway. I love anecdotal books. I've been reading anecdotal engineering books for, I don't know, 50 years. Yeah, Dale.
Yeah, I really I like the way you characterize your references, because it really helps people that are reading this understand where all this is coming from. And I think the other thing too is I know this about you just because I've been involved in what you're doing now, and I've gotten training from you in the past that you cross-check things against each other so that you don't introduce conflicts between sources. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, it is. It doesn't mean that there's not tension. It doesn't mean there's not tension between them, because sometimes different things in different places will come to the fore more than others, but there's a way to resolve it. And this is also where It's Not Luck by Goldratt. Oh, I should have that in here. I don't think I do. Yeah, I should put It's Not Luck. I'll add it to it. But I wasn't blushing when you said that. ChatGPT was blushing, just a metaphor and being funny. It knows where I pulled things from because I talked to it, but I had it generate the bibliography. And it was the one, then it asked me, what about, it said, should I make it foundational or support? I said, well, give me both. So this was about the fourth or fifth iteration of it, getting better every time. But I totally agree with it. So see, this is the point about AI for me, or LMSs. It's my work, my opinion, but it's helped me. It's more than editing. Okay, so I'm not using ChatGPT as an authority. We had a conversation about that actually as well. In fact, I'm pretty sure this is the book I talk about this. How I wrote this book, an example how I use AI. And we talked about this, and I decided to put this in the book. That it's my book. I don't use it as an authority, not so much as a co-thinker, but as a discipline. I don't know, adversarial is the wrong word, as a, I prefer peer-to-peer. And then why I use it, and it does that. So it helps me do this. Now, I've always done this, Dale, as you've noticed from my past. I mean, it's not a new thing for me. I've always looked at it this way because I kind of view myself as a scientist. But ChatGPT accelerates it. It's like I got a superpower now. Whereas before I would miss things and mull over it over weeks. Now I can do it like that. Here's an example. This is one of the really cool things. I mean, it's just really cool. I need to make a link to this. So a couple of days ago, I got somebody in lean manufacturing that, client in lean manufacturing. And I like I said, I've not publicly talked a lot about my experience in it, but I have quite a bit. And that's only because I know other people are so much better than me. Why focus there? So I don't. Uh, and but I that got me interested. And okay, I need to prepare for my engagement. And then actually I found out one of my own people in the ACE program is in lean manufacturing, and I've had some others in lean manufacturing. So I figured, okay, let's go for it. So I spent about 2 or 3 hours talking to ChatGPT about my views of lean manufacturing, because I think lean agile and lean manufacturing are different. Okay, but they have the same subset. So I started talking to it for about an hour or two, and then I was going to make a quick summary. But then we discovered new things. Like the big thing was these transition problems. This is really cool. The transition signal distortions. In other words, like it looks like we've got a spike of errors, but in fact, all we're doing is discovering things sooner. So this is kind of neat. Reported defects increase. The system is, oh, that's what's going on, but we'll think quality got worse. This is what happened to Ford the first time they tried lean. They thought it was broken. They undid the lean work they had done. So these are things. So then I said, okay, well, I got to put this into the physics of flow book. But then it occurred to me, the more I talked to it, it says, well, maybe we should go through, not a lean intro. You don't need that. You don't need that. There are lots of those available. So we came up with governing dynamics on lean manufacturing. And then from waste agency, how do we misinterpret things? What's the organizational response? And then I decided to bring Musk and Tom Gilb into this because they have a lot of experience here. So we bring this in. And then the 7 waste reframed, talking about the causes. Okay, so everybody knows these 7 waste, but I'm putting it in the physics of flow explicitly. And then lean manufacturing. And then finally, since I'll be doing a floor walk, what should I be looking for? This took me another 4 hours with ChatGPT. Now I've still got to edit a little bit. I'm going to put this up as I got to write a post about it to explain it, and I already have a public GPS for it. See what's funny? Oh no, I don't have a public. Oh yeah, I just have to rename it. I think I do have a public one. Oh, this is the one that got it started. I don't know. I want this to be the public. This is like hours and hours. There's another one. I've got to put it up here. But I will have a public one. I just think I forgot. But see, this is how. Yeah, here it is. This is the public GPT. Here, let me fix this. This is a public GPT. No. And this one is a book. There we go. So I got them flipped. I'll give you references to this stuff. I'm happy. Just know this is not as involved as the other one. But if anybody's interested, Thorsten, you kind of said a little bit. Yeah, I think you'll find it interesting. Okay, any other? Oh, see, this was yeah. This is also how this sometimes starts. Is you see that it started with me talking about what happened with why, recent revelation that Taiichi Ono didn't spill everything about it. And I had my opinion about it. I started talking to it to validate that. And then that turned into basically that book. because it told me some things I didn't quite realize. Okay, well, we're at the hour and a half, so this is the normal closing time. Is this format useful? Format any feed? Give me feedback on the format, because this is basically what I'm planning to do with the other discussions, except there'll be shorter intros, because I'll tell people to watch the first half hour of it, so I don't have to go over it all the theory, and we'll just have this set up. Okay.
From a selfish standpoint, I like this format a lot
Yes.
because I'm learning a whole lot about how you're using ChatGPT.
Yeah, that's smart.
I've been playing around with the AI tools and one of the things I'm looking at is figuring out how best to use them to support an e-commerce business that we have here in our household that we've been running since 1999.
Yeah, that's not coincidental, by the way. That's intentional. Because one of the things that people are ignoring about ChatGPT is in some ways it's a mirror of you. In other words, if you take agency and you probe and ask questions, it'll do much better. But if you just sit back and want to get the answers, well, you'll get answers, but you're not going to learn as much. You'll just get answers. One of the things I learned from Flores, this was like he would talk about, so Flores is now back in Chile. I don't know what he does there anymore. At the time I knew him in the 80s, I knew him for a couple, 2-3 years. He was an expatriate of Chile because of the overthrow of the Chilean government, in the 70s or early 80s. I don't know, but about that time. But he used to ask the question, what's the purpose of a question? And most people would say to get an answer. And he would say, when you tell that, see, that's an American answer. That's what we say. That's an American answer. An American answer about questions is to get an answer. So the purpose of a question is to get another question. And that's exploring. And that's how basically, where was that thread actually? I had it up there, but then books and related. Okay. Oh, this might have been the start of it. Yeah. And somehow I got at the end. Yeah. This all started with this stupid question. See, I didn't tell it what I thought he left out and why, but then we got into this discussion of what he left out and why, and we came to the conclusion that there were multiple reasons, and I had one of them, it had a couple of others. See, I had actually, this is what he left out, but I left why I thought it left it out. So that he left out systems thinking and what you do with systems thinking because people understood Deming. So it was combination of he left it out because he thought people knew it and that because he was trying to hide some things. Okay, now I'm going to close this. I will send out, I'll get this up online. I'll probably get the references. I'll probably just go ahead and give you the references to the lean, even if I haven't set it up for public consumption in general. I don't mind if you all see it and use it. Any other things?
That's
Yeah,
cool.
good. Okay, great. Take care.
Yes. Looking
Thanks,
forward
Al.
to seeing you in 2 weeks if I can. All the best.
Cool. Have fun there. Take care.
Thanks.
I'll be
Yeah.
recording these and putting these out there too. Okay.
Awesome.
Super.
Thanks and bye.
Bye.